It is now being recorded. Good evening, everyone. Hear from the public. Hear from the public. Hear from the public. We will move on for Selectmen's briefing. We had a partial collapse of a bridge on Barlow Mills Road. And this happened late Friday afternoon. I found out this morning. Joe took some temporary measures down there, but he's got severe concerns about safety for the public. Particularly, we're assuming some sort of a very heavy truck went over an area there. We had a couple of culverts collapse. We've closed the road. I've notified the town of Union. I've also notified the town of Eastford, the state police, and our fire department. Blockades have been put up in that area as well as signage. And Joe is meeting with the foreman from Eastford there tomorrow morning early to try to do an assessment of how extensive the damage is. So stay tuned on that. I've notified everybody that it's going to stay closed for an undetermined amount of time until we can do that assessment properly. Happy to announce the installation of the split units have been completed today with all of the electrical work at Knowlton Hall.
Good.
I'm told we will be able to operate them tomorrow.
Wonderful.
Nutmeg seemed to do a fine job. I will tell you, I got at least one complaint regarding the casings that we had to put on the exterior of the building. Originally, we were asking them to try to do as much interior with those casings as possible, but because of the thickness of the walls and there being close to a 2-foot space between the floors, they could just not accommodate it. So that's why they had to run the casings on the exterior of the building. But they're up and we're anticipating a much of an improvement with the efficiency of the heating and cooling, as well as air quality there, obviously.
Out of curiosity, what color are the casings?
They came in 2 colors, a dark brown and a white.
Oh,
And they put the dark brown on. That I'm told will lighten so much with age. I've also got Joe doing some research on whether or not we want to consider painting them.
right. That's what I was going to suggest.
Because they are plastic and the flexibility of plastic, it's very difficult. You have to have a rubber-based, a specialized paint. Joe's getting some information on that.
Good.
So I'll keep you posted on that. Unfortunately, we've had 5 new cases of COVID at the senior housing.
Oh,
And they're monitoring. I understand it has not been called to my attention there are any serious hospitalizations or anything as a result, but I also heard that there was a person that had a confirmed case that refused to wear a mask or anything. It was all around that building for a couple of days while they were still contagious. So
well, that's too bad. With Thanksgiving coming up, I got a feeling we're going to get another little spike.
yeah, I know we talked about this. We can talk about it when we get to the agenda about COVID status. But I'm a little surprised we haven't seen more of a spike since school started.
Me too.
But knock on wood, let's hope it stays that way. And I know we also have something on the agenda, but I can continue to receive complaints. I know you folks were copied on a couple of them regarding dirt bikes and quads, both going on private property on town and state roads. We'll discuss this further in the agenda. I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session at the end of the meeting excuse me, discuss security issues regarding one of our buildings. Also a legal matter and pending claim regarding one of our staff. And I'll ask for that at the end of the meeting for those reasons.
Is it just those two items?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, acceptance of the minutes of the following meetings. Catherine, you would call to our attention, and Chris did a little research on the meetings of August 15th, not reflecting a motion that was made. And she did listen to that tape, and I'm going to read you under item 7D of the meeting of August 15th. After school program, Silversmiths moved that the Board of Selectmen support continuation of the Parks and Recreations Department research with the Board of Education and Social Service Department into the concept and workings of the proposed after-school children's program. Phillips seconded the motion, which passed unanimously. And this was left out of the written minutes of the meeting. It was in the recording, as you had indicated, Catherine. So I will entertain a motion to correct the meeting minutes if we're in agreement on that.
So moved. I'm in agreement on that.
I'll second it.
We have a motion seconded or made and seconded, or any further discussions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Item B, special meeting of October 11th, 22. I will entertain a motion.
I move to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, folks. Hear from boards, commissions, committees, and departments.
Hey, Bill.
Yes, sir. Mr. Barta.
Real quick, while you're gonna talk about security at a building, I don't know what building, but we did put up some cameras at station 220. We continue to have some problems with, I guess I call it graffiti, but it's just kind of some lewd things and some smiley faces being painted on the door. And just overall, like, I guess trespassing is a good word for it. Most of what we see on the camera, there's only 2 up right now. There's 3 more to go. It's just kids that hang out at the front entrance there. I've actually talked with the troop about trying to patrol through there a little bit more, especially on the weekend evenings.
Do you need to put a sign up that says no loitering?
Yeah, and I think we had one and it got taken down. I mean, this is how bad it is, Catherine. They literally wave at the camera. I mean, they know it's there and they still don't care.
Can you see who they are?
Some of them, yes, but unfortunately the ones that we think, did whatever, we can't, because they obviously are smart enough to avoid it. That's why there's 3 more that need to go up.
All right.
It's just a matter of getting the time to do it. We're trying to not, spend a fortune. If I had unlimited funds, I'd have a security company come in and make it look like a Fort Knox, but.
Well, actually, it's not the best idea to be talking about what we actually are putting up there.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You're
So,
giving a
but
heads
anyway,
up, okay?
Just so you guys know, it's been a problem for a while and we're continuing to do battle with it.
Yeah.
It's all minor stuff this time. I mean, we did have the door get damaged, but that wasn't kids. So just wanted to make
Okay.
everybody aware of it. All right. Thanks, Bill.
Did we have any on that door issue, which was a serious issue? Did we have any follow-up with the troop on that with any success with
Not a thing.
no?
No. And those are the first things that were covered, obviously, by,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
All
Thanks.
right.
Well, I also understand, and I'm doing some research, it was called to me by one of your members, that you're interested in a lit sign in front of station 220.
Yeah, an electronic
20 rather.
sign. Yeah. There's been some interest for a while. I know I was not at the meeting this month. I was away for work. But they put a committee together, and as you know, one of them approached the town. So we're looking
Who is
into
they?
it. It's Tracy Stansel, Mike Zambo, and I can't remember. Oh, I believe Rob Chernick is the third member of the committee.
That was recently?
Yeah, that was in earlier this month, last week, actually.
I think
Thank
I
So
think I got
they're
a,
doing some
I think
research.
I got a call last Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, they're doing some research. They want to get, I mean, it's not going to be tomorrow, but they want to get some information. There is some grant funding available through different sources. So that's one of the things we're looking at. And they actually, Rob actually showed me some information yesterday. That there's some really nice things out there that, they're not like neon signs or anything like that.
Yeah. Rob asked me to take a look when I was at the function last Sunday. Asked me to take a look at the sign that's in Chaplin.
Yep.
I guess they have a sign.
They do, and so does Tolland. The
And
Tolland
Tolland has
Firehouse on 195 is actually a better example. It's a much nicer and quieter, I would call it a quieter design.
And what is the rationale for putting up the sign? What have they indicated?
Well, we can change the messages without having to go out there, and then also
Okay.
the one that's out here now, the concrete pillars are coming apart in the ground. I don't know. It was a project from a Boy Scout, and I think that it just wasn't done correctly or properly.
So, Paul, are you talking about Station 220 or are you
Nope,
talking
Station
about?
20.
20.
Station 20.
I said,
Thank
in
you,
air, I
thank you.
said
That's what I
220.
didn't
And
understand.
actually, yeah, and I believe there was some discussion about actually taking the current magnetic board that we have here and we could move it to Station 220. So it would be continue to be used.
Yeah.
Just that, what happens here, the wind blows, we lose a letter, then we don't have enough letter. The fact of the matter is the electronic sign would catch a little more attention, I'm sure. So,
I think
Well,
it's, I think
that's
it's,
what appealed to me, because I
Yeah.
think it also helped. I know you're on a drive and we're all trying to do what we can to help to get you more volunteers. And I think
Yeah.
it would give you the ability to appeal to the public a little more.
well, and
With emphasis.
the other thing too is you can put emergency notifications out on there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you can do that don't require you just have to have access to the system,
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Um,
sounds like a great idea. The grant funding, they have some really good options for grant funding.
Yeah, there is actually a couple of different grant funding options. One of our paid staff is actually the chief in Taftville. So he's putting together some information for me
Good.
to give me the different options to pass on to the committee, because I'm gonna let the committee do it. I have enough on my plate, so.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Thank
I think that in all honesty, I don't think it would happen if we can't get some type of grant funding to help it out. So.
Thanks,
I'll be
Paul. And
curious as to how much
I
it
did
cost.
tell Rob and Mike that I do a little research on it, so
Yeah.
I'll try to do what I can from this end and keep you informed. They were concerned about perhaps some zoning restrictions or whatever. So we'll do some research on that. I haven't found any yet, but we'll get you more information.
All
on that.
right.
I'll
Yeah,
be curious,
Catherine, me
I'll be
too.
curious as to how much it costs in case there isn't grant funding to see if anything can be done.
Yeah, I'm curious too. I'm waiting for them to come back with that. I think it's like a lot of things. You can have the bottom and then you can have the like outlandish, crazy
Right.
number. So,
Right.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to item 7, old business, rent increases for the Ashford apartment buildings review material, reestablishment of a fair rent commission. I did have a conversation with town council today on a number of different subjects, and he's still reviewing the process for that, if we in fact want to consider that. And we'll continue to carry this on our agenda for further discussion. I
One
did get
thing
an
that did,
email, if I could
Yeah.
just finish. I did get an email from Melissa regarding some of the state statutes that are applicable to what we were talking about at our last meeting with certain violations and enforcement abilities and holding of rent and that sort of stuff. So I've shared that with Duncan also, and I'll keep you updated on it. Catherine,
Melissa also suggested having a town meeting about this, and I really think that that's jumping the gun. Particularly if we're not able to do anything to help them.
Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed to a public forum on it, but I think it's a little too early for that, and we need to do a
Right.
little more diligence on that so we have more information if we
I
in fact
agree.
are going to present something to a town meeting.
I agree.
All right, item B, discuss reopening strategies. We continue status quo. I continue to monitor and share with everyone our reports we're getting from our health department and CDC. I wasn't happy to get the news about the senior housing today, but we'll keep you posted on that. Ashford, item C, Ashford Advisory School Building Committee. I don't have a report other than this coming Friday. We have invited bond counsel to come down and meet with some of the stakeholders. I understand Jim Rupert's going to attend, Cindy, the superintendent. I'm not sure Jane Urban, she's been invited, will be able to make it. But just to try to get the protocols down and get everybody familiarized with the whole process regarding upcoming bonding issue.
We just, there was an email that we got that the school was approved. Cindy Ford had sent something out. The school was approved in terms of offsetting costs.
That was for the oil tank replacement, and Department
Okay.
of Administrative Services approved the reimbursement. I think it was 63%
Yes.
of our expenditures and the proposed amount of the 270,000 for the entire project that we had submitted. So that's good news.
Yep.
I know Cindy did a lot of work on it, and we all appreciate that.
Yeah, she's to be commended for getting that
Yeah.
through.
Item D under old business is a COVID update. I think we've kind of covered that in our discussions. Item E, update status of the after-school children's program. Dave is back, but I have not heard, I got a brief email from him who said he was going to check with the payroll company. I know we discussed that last week, but that's kind of a critical point on trying to figure out expenditures. Again, that payroll company would manage the payroll, workers' comp deductions, things like that. So we'll continue to carry it. I don't think any of our intentions have changed. We're supportive of the theory, but we certainly need to have a lot more diligence done on that.
You're sending him the name of the board chair, right? Library
I-
board chair, because he doesn't seem to know.
You know, what I told him was, because he said he wanted to talk to Shantae. I've been in, I'm not in daily contact, but with Beth, I've been in her contact. It's really the payroll company that he's got to talk to, because whatever cost the library is incurring, they're going to be different. It's a whole different animal than with the after school. So what I did send Dave, and I believe I copied both you and Roger on it, again, was the name of the company with their contact number in Pomfret, and suggested he ask them. And I got an email back from him. Wasn't necessarily real clear, but indicating he was going to contact them today.
Okay.
All right. Item G, American Rescue Plan.
Street lighting, item F.
Street lighting. I have nothing new to report other than we're still working. I talked with Jonathan again last week, and we're still working on that. Item G, American Rescue Plan, potentials for project funding. Have you folks had a chance to review the proposal that was submitted for the Ashford Local Business Relief Fund Program?
No,
Did that just come out?
I think Chris forwarded, my understanding was she was gonna forward that to you either last week or the week before. Did that happen, Chris? You're
It went
muted.
out in the packet for the meeting on the 11th.
Okay. Well, when you guys get a chance, if you can check that packet, if you can't find it, let me know, we'll resend it. Basically, it was part of what was sent out. I know the town of Mansfield did a similar program. Willington did a similar program. And it was more or less just a draft with consideration for our board to consider as one of the items. Regarding the potentials for upcoming things, and I did want to bring it up, we did get the final estimates from J&S. And they're considerably higher than what it was last year, unfortunately.
Remind me who J&S is.
J&S Radio and Sales for our,
Oh, that, yeah, we had
Yeah.
heard that they were higher.
yeah.
How much higher?
We approved, was it 80,000, Chris, for the ARPA? We had at our last town meeting, $80,000 approved. DPW has come in at just shy of 75,000 just for their trucks. And the fire department right now is at 41,310. So we are considerably short, and we're gonna have to go back to a town meeting to ask for more funding. We did at the same time, Cindy had sat in, discussed the potential of radios on the buses or a minimum of a base station up at the school for coordination's sake. I believe Paul was at that meeting, and it was the consensus that it would be great if we could get them on the radios on all of the vehicles, being that the highway department obviously is our eyes and ears, but also that the buses are that for emergencies or whatever, to be in coordination with the fire.
How many radios is that?
We have 13 buses and 3 vans.
13. Thank you.
So
Somehow that,
my thought was, we're having continual breakdowns of our radios on our public works. In
Mhm.
fact, probably half of them are inoperable right now. Does our board want to consider going ahead, being we have funds in place, and give them the go ahead to start on the order for public works with the intention of the balance, and then going to town meeting as soon as possible for the fire and whatever proposal we end up making for the school at the same time? Do you guys have, I know I'm catching you cold on this, but do you have a feeling on that?
would we,
I'd like to hear
I'm
from
sorry,
the
go ahead.
fire department.
Go ahead, Catherine, I'm sorry.
I was actually listening. What were you gonna say, Roger?
I'd like to hear from the fire department in terms of where they stand on this issue. Appreciate their input.
Well, I sat in on the meeting, and as Bill said, the numbers are substantially higher due to cost increases. It's nothing that, in fact, both Joe and I pulled radios off the initial proposal to try to bring the numbers back down. I have no problem. We don't really have a choice. I think at this point, I don't think there was a lot left. Chris and Bill, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like, we might be able to add a couple radios in that town proposal that we could use in the fire department. But the reality would be, I think it'd be easier to go back to town meeting and say, with the increase, this is what the fire department, and we've done the town with the original numbers. And this is what we would need to do the fire department.
Oh,
You know,
Bill, sorry.
it's so complicated. So,
Yeah.
Bill, how
yeah.
big a deal is it to have a town meeting that's advertised in the Ashford Citizen for November to go back for this item. I don't know if we have anything else that we need to go back for at this point in time, but just to get this going, because we're going into storm season, serious storm season with winter and everything. I want to make
Well,
sure it's not delayed, and I'm a little concerned about us pursuing one part of it when we had talked with the public about both Public Works and the fire department. I don't know that we really talked about the school buses at that time.
We did not talk about the school buses, and that would have to be a side issue. My thought was we will have about $5,000 left over if we go ahead with Public Works.
Right.
That would be enough to get at least one radio and a monitor to the fire department, with the understanding then we'd follow up once we get approval from the town meeting.
So I'm good with that. I'm good with pursuing that. But I would also like us to again, a town meeting, if it's a single issue, it's a quick meeting, it's advertised through the Citizen. And to make sure we get the approval for the rest of the funding so that we can make this whole.
Well, I agree, and I think that's the intent, and I think there's a high trust level there between us
Right.
and the
And
fire
the thing
department.
is,
There are several items that were short on funding. This obviously is the biggest one, but I think that if we call a special meeting, we can get that accomplished, voting on 3 or 4 of the things just to win. And then I've got a list that I'll submit to you and Roger, just things in my mind, potential for other funding. Chris has worked up a balance sheet that should be in your packages that
we
went
saw
out
it, yeah.
on funding that is remaining in our ARPA funding. And I think because we're not critical on time, but we're starting to move up on having to get the second tranche of that dedicated.
I mean,
So Bill, on this town meeting, I'm sorry, Roger, you have to
I was only
understand
just
something.
starting to ask, I mean, if going, probably your point too, is with the town meeting, I mean, we're talking about, would this delay a month, 2 months? I mean, then do we have to worry about increases in costs again?
I would hope we'd call a town meeting before then, and JNS, Tony is willing to go ahead and order the DPW in its entirety anytime we give them the go ahead. And the fire department, it's just, I'm uncomfortable with doing that, not bringing it to a town meeting.
Yeah.
The fire department balance
Yeah.
that we would owe.
Okay, I mean, I just want to.
So Bill, if in fact, what I was going to say is going back to the business of the town meeting, is that, what is today? Today is the 17th. We have to get the call for that meeting into the Citizen, to be published in the Citizen by the 20th. So in order for us to have that meeting in November. So, my recommendation is that we add something to this agenda to do that very thing so that we can get it in there, or we have a small special meeting with the selectmen to take care of that and make sure that we've put together what we need to get it into the November Citizen so we can have that meeting sometime in the first 2 weeks of November.
Why don't we try to call for a special meeting Wednesday morning? Let me put some things together that are loose
Okay.
ends.
It's going to
and
have to be
do that.
for me.
I'll talk
Yeah.
to Sherry tomorrow to verify the deadline of the 20th and see if we
Right.
can get that in. And then
Okay,
that'll
and-
give Chris an opportunity also to check timelines.
Yeah, and for me, on Wednesday, I have multiple appointments, so anything between, 9 o'clock or 8:30 or whatever, early in the morning works for me.
Good.
I have,
Good.
yeah, I get
That's
tied
fine.
up after 10.
Roger said it works better for him. So we'll try something for 8:30 or 9.
That'd be great.
Should be a quick meeting, but also what I'll try to do prior to that meeting is get you a list of some things if we clean up at the same time.
And we might want to, with that, if you're talking about anything for the school, is determine what is at least, whether we treat that as a separate thing later on, or if we are able to get something for the base station.
Yeah, the base station's about $2,500. So,
Oh, good, good, good. So,
you
but we
know.
could add that into it.
I mean, my understanding right now is that the radios that are on the buses, although they're in a band that is not going to be around a lot longer, but
Yeah.
they are in communication with their band. So basically, if we got a base station with somebody to
Right.
cover it at the school, we can get information in and out.
Right, so we should include that in whatever our call is for the meeting. Or making sure people know that we're talking about that
What we'll do
too.
is we'll draft something up in draft form, send it to you and Roger, and we can discuss it a little further. So
Super.
Paul, if I hear you correctly, you're all right if we go ahead and order the equipment for the highway garage?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, we might as well. First of all, we know that it's gonna take a while, so let's get it moving.
Mhm.
We go back to town meeting and, I mean, let's hope that they approve the fire department stuff and then we can get that ordered as well. And
Well,
get things moving. I mean, even if it all came in at the very same time, there's only one of Tony.
Right.
So,
Well, and,
you know, I
and,
mean, I know we had a big discussion about the install and everything and they have it covered. It's not gonna take like months or anything, but
yeah,
it's just getting the actual supplies and things is the bigger problem.
well,
So,
with the supply stream the way it is right now, that's why I'd like to get as much of ordered as we
Yep.
can.
yeah, no, I
Get-
think it's
get that moving.
and I mean, like I said, get moving on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so,
Not only that, but also to give Tony a heads up that we are pursuing the other piece of it.
right,
And make sure that we can, in a sense, if we can, kind of lock them into whatever the costs are gonna be, because we're gonna have this town meeting in first 2 weeks of November, so it shouldn't jack up between now and then.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and give Tony the go-ahead. Funding is in place and everything for the radio section, and also a minimum of a base station for the fire department. And I assume one unit would help you other than having nothing at all, Paul.
Mhm.
So I'm sure we can
Yeah,
work that out.
absolutely.
I have been keeping in regular contact with Tony, just to let him know we're active on this.
I actually am supposed to see him tomorrow, so
Okay.
about
right.
something else, but
You can let them know.
All right.
And Bill, we don't need a motion on that, right? Because this was already approved by the
The
public.
money's in place.
Yeah.
I just wanted my board to be aware of what my
Yep.
intent was and make sure we're on the same page. I'm gonna move on to item H, Tremco House Review Committee. I had the one email from Bob Hurd, who said we're gonna have something by the end of the month. I have had a brief discussion with town council that at the end of this month, we're gonna want to take some action regarding that contract we signed and reimbursement of our deposit that we put down.
Thank you.
All right, I've also with town council had a discussion about revisit the employee and insurance incentive program. And he wants another couple of days before he gives us something in writing on it.
Okay.
New business, board commission committee appointments, recreation commission. I'm going to ask our board not to take any action at this time. There's still confusion down there. I know Sherry had a personal emergency last week and also had, because of lack of a quorum, canceled their meeting. There's some confusion as to their alternates, who's moving up, who's not moving up. And until I get that clarified, I can't realistically recommend any movement on that at this time. Economic Development Commission. We're still waiting for recommendations to fill vacancies created by the passing of Gary Lawrence and also the resignation of Richard Williams. I know they're in discussions with people, but I have not heard anything from them yet. Commission on Aging, fill a seat. That's still being worked on. Inland Wetlands Watercourse Committee, we have not got any recommendations on that yet, so there's no action to be taken. Chris, any tax refunds?
Yeah, I have one. Citing General Statute 12-129. A refund in the amount of $335.10 to Galen Bopro.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Roger made the motion. Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
pass unanimously. Thank you. Item C, discuss use of motorized unregistered vehicles on town roads. As we know, and we briefly discussed earlier in our last meeting, I've been getting complaints from a number of different areas in town. Mentioned a few: Ashford Park around Southworth Drive, Lake Chaffee area. Those complaints are about unlicensed dirt bikes and quads operating both on private property and in town roadways. But we've also gotten, you folks were copied on one email regarding complaints in the C-Car Road area. In general, I've had discussions with Troop C, and a rather lengthy one today. And I guess not to my surprise, and I don't think to your surprise, this is a issue that they're having statewide, and he said even nationally, with the proliferation of dirt bikes, smaller dirt bikes, less expensive dirt bikes, and these quads, who seem to be going up in price. They're dealing with it everywhere. And what he said to me, what they do as a practice is that if they have a complaint, they would encourage our residents and anybody possible to videotape the perpetrators. And I had one case of this with Southworth Drive, and I'm not going to mention names up there, where a resident called me, and I've been talking to both the man and the wife for a week or so, happened to have videotape. And they called Troop C today, or they told me they were going to, and the troop will go out. Their policy is that their first encounter with the individual that's been identified, if they have whoever takes the video has to be able also to identify specifically the person driving the vehicle. I'm going to call it bike a vehicle and the quad a vehicle, but as long as they can do that, the state police will go to the residence of the perpetrators, now assuming it's a minor, and give them a verbal warning.
Yep.
And if it happens again, they will do, I believe they call it a juvenile certification that they're going to have to appear in court. That's for the second time.
Very good.
What he said to me very candidly was the courts aren't doing much with this stuff. They're overburdened and they've got a lot bigger things on their plate. But that's the process to follow. I called the one couple. I'm going to make a couple of calls to people that I've heard from Lake Chaffee. I will call Mr. Chaperone tomorrow, and let him know what I've heard. They will not, if a dirt bike is being operated and it's on private property, and there has not been either a complaint from the owner of that property, or they're on their own private property, there's no intervention that Troop C is going to be able to do.
Right.
And I will also emphasize that to anybody that's called me in the past or any new callers. I've also it's been suggested to me, actually by somebody on the fire department, that DEEP has an environmental enforcement group, particularly if they're talking about on town properties or in public forests, that these bikes are being used and they're destructing the property. They actually have more leverage and abilities for enforcement than the police does through the courts.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a name at DEEP yet, but I'm going to make some inquiries this week as to what their policies and protocols are, how we inform them and what they need.
Very good. Bill, as I see that Mr. Charpone didn't attend, he had planned to attend this meeting, but I would like to just take a look at the list of things. I do live in the on Seacart Road, and I'm aware of the issue. And in fact, as I mentioned before, I stopped 4 people that were on 2 bikes. I don't know, the Tuesday night before my surgery on my knee, so I know. And spoke to them separately because they were in 2 different places on Seacar Road. And, you know, let them know I was a selectman, let them know that they were illegally riding their bikes on that road. One of the second set didn't think, his response was, oh, I didn't think this was a town road, because it's the dirt portion of the road, I'm sure, or maybe that was just an excuse. But anyway, I looked at the email that Mr. Charpone wrote, and there are a number of things on here that I don't think that the public, Mr. Charpone, or the people, he put all of the neighbors on copy for this, that they may not understand that there are certain things that cannot, these options that they put out, or that he put out, I don't know that all of the people were involved, that are not things that the town can do. So I just want to quickly run through what's on here.
If you don't mind, go through it. I obviously got the letter. I don't have it in front of me, but
Yeah, I'm just going to read them out, and you'll have that, you know. The identifying access to remote areas where these young people can safely ride their vehicles without disturbing their neighbors. Certainly it would not be on town property. So this is not something that is the town's responsibility to do. And if they cannot ride them on town property.
I in a conversation last week that I had with him, he indicated the town should consider establishing an area on public property, and I
The
told him that
liability would be
the
liability would be outrageous.
there's a whole protocol for that if we were in fact going to be discussing it, but that there was no availability of any of those areas at this time without
Well,
going through insurance issues, going through protocols, going through the Board of Selectmen.
Mhm.
It would be a long way if we even think about that. And because of liability issues at this point, I certainly couldn't support that at this time.
I can tell you that out here on the Seacar Amadon, in this area, we have had a problem with, we certainly had a problem down the road a piece where people were riding quads. They even went up onto Danny Zajaczek's property, which did not make him happy. But the person who owned the property had lived in Marlboro, and he had people coming out and riding quads out there, and there's some wetlands behind there. That was an issue. And what ended up happening was on his own property, he hit a trench and he flipped his quad and became a quadriplegic. He has since passed away, but that was a perfect example of what can happen.
Yep.
So I would not be in favor of anything being set up on any property that the town has anything to do with.
Yeah, I had a discussion with a couple of members of the fire department. And asked them if they had recalled any incidences, and that was a primary one that I guess his passing was a direct result of those injuries.
Yes, it was. Yep. Okay, so the second one was creating a position of town constable. And our experience in the past with the town constable has not been very good. So I don't know what a town constable could possibly do that the state police would not be doing.
Yeah, back probably over 30 years ago now, we had constables, and
Mhm.
it did become quite controversial as to limitations of authority and sidearms and a number of other
Exactly.
things. Again, if the town was to consider that, it would have to start with the Board of Selectmen making recommendations.
Right.
And going that way. I've heard the same comments from members of the Lake Chaffey Association, and
Mhm.
they've actually hired their own private type of constable
Hmm.
who's running into same problems and issues that the state police do with enforceability.
Right.
And quite honestly, if say the Board of Selectmen was to approve looking into these things, either one of those first two items, Catherine, would be months, if not years away.
I understand. And that's why I wanted to just run through this so that
Yeah.
should Mr. Sharpone or any of the neighbors tune in to the recording of this meeting, they'll be able to hear some of these answers.
Yep.
The protocol for reaching out to the Connecticut State Police Troop C in Tolland is the next one. There is nothing unique about calling the state police, and any individual can call them and indicate that there's an issue. What you provided, Bill, in terms of it would be helpful if there was a videotape of the activity for the state police to work with, is good information for them to have.
Yeah.
I will tell you that we have a policeman who lives in our neighborhood who was a bit concerned about people taking photographs, or expressed a concern, safety concern about people taking photographs and or videotaping, I guess, when in fact, apparently one of the people who was riding the motorbike may have in some way accosted Mr. Sharpone's wife when she said something. I don't know, the details, but there was certainly a concern around that. And he was a little concerned that there might be, a danger to this. Personally, having, met the people who are doing this, I don't think that that's really an issue, but that's my personal perspective.
Well, I
as-
mean, it's a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
And somebody do that, unfortunately, do it at their own risk. Unfortunately, as I reiterated earlier, unless the state police coincidentally happens to be there and visualize it for themselves, they can't
Right.
really follow up on it. And
Which
that's
which takes me to the next thing on the list. It says the results of Ashford's Director of Social Youth Services, Melissa McDonough's efforts to identify whether these children have adequate parental supervision. I don't know that Melissa can pursue something based upon hearsay.
the protocol there, and I had a meeting with Melissa this morning,
Good.
would be if one individual alleges or suspects there's child abuse,
Right.
there is a hotline and there's a protocol with DCF for that individual to contact. If
Right.
they have proof of a child being abused and it's something immediate, they can either call the state police or they can call the first selectman that can
Yeah.
look in and use their discretion to then notify the state police. But there's a whole protocol for that. It is not something necessarily that Melissa can do. And certainly that's what we have DCF for, and there are certain other protocols that can be followed through the juvenile court system with that.
So I think that,
Leaving, I think what was
Yeah.
called to our attention was that this gentleman on Seacar Road felt that the minors were unsupervised for long periods of the day. And that does not fall within the definitions from what I've heard from DCF and from Alyssa in the definition of child abuse.
no, and I don't think it is either. The other thing too is these children are at least 14 years old. At least. So at least that's what they appear to be. Of
Yeah.
course, everybody looks really young to me. But
Me
they're,
too.
I believe they're at least 13 or 14 years old, and children are allowed to be, I'm going to say unsupervised during the day at that age. You know, it's a matter of whether their parents are aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know I don't know if any of the individuals here have actually contacted the parents to say, hey, I have a concern.
Well, Mr. Chaperone had expressed to me that he did approach the parents there, his neighbor on Seacar, and was not received too well, and was basically told to get off his property. Now, that person happens to be a renter, but that person has as much right renting that property as if he owned the property.
Okay, good. Yes, and for Roger's edification, there's a shared driveway that goes back from Seacar Road back towards a large pond area where there are houses back there. And so this where these folks live is back there, and that driveway is right next to Mr. Chaperpone's property. So these young people racing their bikes up and down that shared driveway is quite the nuisance for Mr. Chaperpone. It's quite noisy. So less of a safety issue there, but more of a noise kind of an issue.
Yeah, I talked to town council about this and shared that email that we got.
Yeah,
And that particular case, I was advised is a civil matter.
yes,
And perhaps Mr. Chaperpone should consult with his counsel on that.
yes. Okay, and then the next one was the need to contact the State of Connecticut Department of Children and Families, DCF, which I think, fits right into if there is true abuse, then you would be, doing something along those lines, but I don't know how this one fits.
Again, if someone has suspects child abuse, that's
Yeah.
why the DCF has that hotline and they have protocols they follow. And
Right.
they're much more inept to do that than we are.
And the next one on the list was determining whether the residents at 183 Seacar Road are homeowners or are renting, and if they are renting, contact information for their landlord. What Mr. Chaperpone may not know is that's quite easy to get. All they have to do is contact the assessor or even the tax office to find out who the owner is at that property. And as Bill, as you said, apparently these folks are renters.
Yeah, and I did just that first thing this
Good.
morning, both with our assessor and tax office, and determined both the present owner of the property and the two people leasing the property.
And the last thing on this list was the possibility of strengthening Ashford's noise ordinance. We don't have a noise ordinance. And, certainly that one has come up before and was not pursued for a number of reasons. And I don't know that, I'm not sure what the decibel level is on these motorbikes, and considering the duration of the time that they're being, driven up and down that shared driveway. So I think he wasn't aware that there is no noise ordinance. He was talking about strengthening it.
I know a resident on Westford Hill Road that bought one.
They bought what?
a noise indicator.
Oh, cool. You have to be trained in how to use it, but I don't think the training is that tough.
And ensure it's
Um,
properly calibrated.
Yes.
Do you know if that person has been successful in pursuing any noise violations? What is-
He has not. But the town is doing what we can there.
Okay. All right. So, I'm hoping that we can provide some kind of response to him. And certainly I will let him and the other neighbors know that this has been videotaped if they want to listen to it.
Good.
When all is said and done, it sounds like this is really more of a civil matter and not a lot that the town can do to change what's going on there. Giving people advice about how troops see, what will help troops see in curtailing some of this activity is good. People making sure that they, do whatever they can at the time it's happening as well, would be good.
Yeah, Catherine, you may have, well, I know you've experienced it, but anybody that sits in this seat
Yes,
realizes the most difficult thing that we deal with. And we deal with all sorts of difficult things,
yep,
but is to resolve issues between neighbors.
absolutely.
Most people don't realize that our jurisdiction and authority has strict limits. And trying to mediate between neighbors is the most difficult part of the job. And I don't have to elaborate any more on that. I'm sure
And I
you
can tell you,
experienced it.
and I can tell you, it almost never works out well. Every once in a while, and actually, in my particular case, where it worked out well is where we had cooperation from Troop C to address the issue. And, but otherwise, very difficult.
Surprising enough, what I've tried to do, and this was during my first 4 years as first selectman as well, was be a mediator and a facilitator and offer
Right.
to get the parties together,
Mhm.
either at the offices here or wherever. And what's unbelievable, in the cases that come to mind right now, either one of the other parties didn't want to do that.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
and it's really difficult because you're not going to reach any sort of an agreement unless both parties are willing to discuss how you're going to try to get resolution. But anyway,
Well,
all right.
should I see these young people on the road again? I already warned them. And I will go up to the house and say something there, but I will definitely try to videotape them if I can. And I'm going to encourage our neighbors to do the same.
I know I don't have to warn you, but anytime you go on private property, please be very careful.
Tread lightly.
Oh, I would not normally, yeah, absolutely. But I will make sure I get the names of the people that are on the bikes.
Good, good. Remarks for the good of the board. Any items especially that either one of you want on the agenda for our next meeting?
The only thing I have is the transfer station committee.
I know there's talk and we're trying to put together a meeting on that.
Okay,
I'll keep you posted.
okay, thank you.
I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
I've got 8 o'clock, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Have a good night, Paul.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, John.